Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for your support of Indie Agency News. And let's meet an indie agency. We're going back to, I guess we'd call it my roots, right, guys?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while.
My audio roots. We first met 2002? I think it's 2002. We've known each other that long. I think that tracks.
Where was that in the 2002?
Was it London International?
Well, you and I, we actually we judged London International together.
But that was later. That was 07, 08. That was great. Huge props to Barb and the team on that.
Yeah. So I don't remember earlier than that. I just knew that I had known you for a while.
Yeah, I think that we were in the same orbit through. So I was in radio for 15 years, and we're obviously Oink Inc. We're going to be talking about audio creativity. Yeah, I think that I was a finalist in London in 2002, and I think that somehow we got connected, and that was like the early days. So, yeah. And then, then I come to find out that we're all sort of from the same area. And then it's like, okay, I kind of like these guys. And then it's like, oh, they're from Philly and the Philly area, Jersey. And then
I was the whole thing.
That ruined it all. And then, then I was like, oh, I like them even more. And then I started digging into your work and I was like, Jesus, these guys are fantastic. So, so welcome. First of all, thank you so much for supporting this mission and being members. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. This is a great organization. I'm constantly, trying to get more and more sort of involved in it and everything. It's fascinating.
Oh no, it's great. And I think that the thing that's really important is that the two of you, having been in the audio side of it for so long, and I want to make sure that we're very, very clear here, is that we were all in radio for a long time, and we've been using the word radio for a long time, but ostensibly we've been doing audio creativity for a very long time. And now people have caught up to the fact that it is audio creativity. So talk a little bit about the background of the agency and how you guys even got started.
Well, we started out in 1992.
Oof. Yeah.
So I had been working for a company called Radio Band of America in New York.
Right.
Left there, worked for Burt Bars, the great Burt Burtis, for a short time. And then there was some fallout about my leaving the prior agency. And so I went out on my own.
Right.
We'll skip past all that.
Fallout.
And, and Jim, who's younger than me, is my brother, and he's younger than me by 6 years, was a copywriter at an agency in the Philly area. And he was doing some freelance on the side for us, prior entities.
Yeah.
So I reached out to him and said, hey, what do you think about, getting in on this? And that was only a few months into it. I think I formally started it in February of that year. And then he was there in August. And it was good timing because at that point, I was completely by myself. So anytime I was in the studio, I was unable to do anything else. Yeah. So we started out in this tiny little office in Philly. I mean, tiny. And we were both on the phone all day, And then we moved it to New York, where we operated out of a studio called Tabby Sound. Jim and I then both moved to that area. He was in North Jersey. I was in Manhattan. And then we built a studio there. We built one in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And just been, sort of plugging away ever since. And getting back to your audio remark earlier, we went through a couple transformations during that 33-year time period.
Right.
One of which was, hey, let's stop just working for ad agencies and go after brands as well. But then another iteration was, let's start really focusing on digital, which we started doing probably 7 years ago. We were doing some really early dynamic work, interactive work, recently, some work involving AI, sort of with a hybrid human, effort to it. So yeah, we've been sort of pretty good at staying nimble and kind of going with the flow and seeing, assessing what's coming up and all that.
Yeah. Jim,
well, when you look at us, I think
your side nimble. Of the story.
I think nimble. Yeah, I think I ooze nimble.
Well, I mean, it's the nature of what we did. I mean, if you go back to 92, so that was like some of the golden era of especially Radio Creative. You had was it Radioland out here, Austin Howe? You had,
right.
Yeah. I mean, you had you had these radio only shops that were doing.
Yeah, most of them were in Los Angeles, just because I don't really know why. I think people kind of
the talent was there.
Well, that's what they said, but I mean, we were working. There's really good, voice talent, obviously, but like we were pretty much exclusively New York for maybe the first 5 or so years until like ISDN started happening and things like that. I
well, the other thing I think that did happen was that we were all busy back then. There was, worldwide radio in the nude. But if you remember, Dick Orkin was even still around, and Bert, like in those early years.
Yeah. So for those of you, look up Dick Orkin, because it's worth a search, because you'll be like, oh, okay.
So, we would find out that we lost a job that went to LA, and all our competitors were there. There was nobody else in New York doing it. We were the only ones in New York. Right. So we opened up a shop out there to try and sort of capture any work that would have otherwise been lost. Just, even with our own sort of clients who were otherwise sort of faithful, but they'd go out there, because it was all about schmoozing and staying at like Shutters in Santa Monica was the big thing.
Taking them to the smokehouse. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but then like Jim said, once the technology started changing, I'd fly out to LA, and I was out there every 3 weeks for 8 years. I'd go out and there'd be no clients sitting in the room. And I may even have flown out with an audio engineer from New York, and we're kind of like, what are we doing here?
Right.
And then it all just started going that way where the technology took over. You no longer had 5 people fly up from Dallas to spend a week in New York, doing spots. Everything became more remote for them, and sharing files, and all that kind of thing. So
yeah, like the biggest sea changes in audio have been, to your point. So for those who don't know, ISDN was a hardwired through the phone lines, and so you'd be in a studio, you'd have a big rack, and it was expensive, and this ISDN box was like 10 grand, and that's how you would analog bring that audio in and capture it. But then MP3, and then all those things. So a few things happened is that things started moving quicker. The other thing is, if you needed a British person, you could get a British person.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
It wasn't one of us 3 schmucks trying to pull it off. But it's been very interesting. And to your point, Dan, what you were saying, and Jim also saying about agility, it's really important to point out that what you have been doing, you said it earlier, is you've been staying on the wave and in some ways ahead of it. Why is that so important for people to understand, especially as it relates to audio? Because people have to understand that this is a craft, right? It's not, people can be very cavalier about the craft of audio, but when it's done really well, it can make a massive, massive difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we sort of fight every day, is talking clients into let's go further with the radio. I saw like a study today that Cumulus had put out, and it's not the first time they've made this case, that, creativity makes up 49% of, the successful stories behind good advertising campaigns. Whereas many marketers feel as though they're surprised to learn that, and they think it's like 20%,
Right.
So, good radio is just like, unlike anything else, that's available to you and should be used that way. That's why so many of us were so busy back then. There's an art to it. You couldn't generate what Dick Orkin was working at, ABC and Company, ad agency. There's this, the best stuff always to us is like this simple stuff that communicates one message. It entertains, it rewards the listener for the time they've invested. And so we try and maintain those principles, which today is harder and harder, mostly because the audio dollar hasn't necessarily grown. It's now carved up. It's in podcasting, it's in streaming, it's in all these things. So we see a tendency of when you're going to air something, it better work. So you got to sell, cram stuff in.
I never bought into that. I mean, it's like, I get it. You treat it like a promotional medium, but then you're also diluting your brand a little bit. I think it's just like the whole thing. Dan, move your head to the right. Move your head to. Oh yeah, there's your Radio Mercury Award. I got one downstairs. Cash award. I have to remind people that's a cash award. So, I got mine in 2003. What year is that from you?
This one pretty recent.
Yeah.
I don't see a year on it.
A lifetime achievement award.
Yeah, maybe that's what this was. Maybe 3 years ago for a staple spot, I think.
I have one over there, I don't know. I feel left out. I just hung the shelf in the wrong spot.
You did hang the wrong shelf, but you do have that Wheel of Fortune thing behind you. Tell us that story.
No, it's signed by Pat and Vanna. So we did their work for 20, it might be 20 years. I don't know. It was a ridiculous time through a bunch of their properties, Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, Hollywood Squares. Whoopi Goldberg had a talk show before The View and all that. We did stuff for that anyway. But we used to go to the tapings and show tapings and stuff like that. Oh yeah. We were like, Vanna we'd have sleepovers and she'd bring the kids. It was a good time.
Oh my God.
No, that's
bullshit. No, I kind of figured that was bullshit, but
I was just saying if you're listening, frankly.
Yeah, no. Hollywood Squares, my Paul Lynde impression. We were out there making whoopee.
Yeah.
I think that's wrong. All right. I'm veering from the format of this because I think that you both carve out a really different, slightly different part of this industry. And Jim, I want to talk to you a little bit about creative, because like Dan had said, you had started as a copywriter, and we all were in that role, and old heads in the business. And so when you're talking to people at agencies or at brands, there's almost this weird nostalgic thing about it. But the one thing that keeps coming up and always comes up when especially as it relates to radio, not necessarily just audio, is if you can do radio well, you can pretty much do anything well. And you say to old heads radio and they go, oh God, I miss doing that stuff. It was so fun. Yeah. Talk a little bit about that, but why we shouldn't feel as though that's like not a thing anymore.
Yeah. I mean, like, a lot of we rely on freelancers a bit here and there for some jobs. And those folks are everywhere from, 25 to 65. And the folks of, a certain generation, they do, they like it. I mean, it's kind of beneath them. These are like, group creative directors and executive creative directors who kind of do this stuff on the side just because they like it and it's fun. And, we bring them kind of interesting jobs and all that. So, that's the kind of radio they like to do. It's not, I don't think it is radio in general, because a lot of times they're asked to do, the crap you hear every day.
Right.
The bar is set so low and expectations are so low that when when we get to team up with folks who are passionate about it, like we are, it's just fun. Like they'll know that they can try different ideas, that we'll try and sell through things that they would have no shot, with their current client or in the current atmosphere, or, some boring brand or whatever. So that's kind of part of the fun for us is doing stuff because, you know, we're passionate about it. And,
Yeah.
and it's just knowing that when you do it well, like you're driving down the road and you hit a commercial break and it's 5 minutes of pain. And if there's one spot in the middle of there that stands out, you know, that's going to do as much for your brand. You know, that's what you remember.
Yeah. And we point to certain campaigns, Real Men of Genius. So Mark Gross, when he currently at High Dive, was at DDB Chicago forever. And, you know, you take a look at some of these serialized things. And so, you know, we look at that, and it's interesting because Dan, you mentioned a little bit about going direct to brands, and Jim working a little bit with folks who might not be able to sell through this work to a brand. There are a couple things here. So just try to track with me because, you know, I'm from the Jersey side. So number one, if I'm a brand and I knew that I had that real estate, right? So look at it from a media perspective. If you're a brand and you're like, you know what, I can actually buy the first spot in a block, and I could get out of the gate hot, or I could bookend, or there's ways that I could do this really, really creatively that, you know, that really, really does make an impact. The other thing is, what are those conversations with brands anymore? And, you know, we talk about it, and it was a generational thing with me as well, where it was perceived as simply promotional. And I would keep fighting that. Yeah. How do we keep fighting that? And how does that even break through with a brand, and how you articulate that?
You know, we're in a good position, generally speaking, in that anybody who would reach out to us in the first place, we already know is serious about radio, because we are known to be, you know, we're pretty expensive, but a lot of that has to do with the process. Like Jim said, we enlist a lot of people. Last week, we went through a deck with a client that had contributing to it were 9 writers, and 5 composers, you know, which you don't really see very often, especially nowadays. But when a brand is really, you know, into radio and they really want the results, and they know what good work is, normally they're the ones that are calling us. If they didn't really care, we're not really the place for them. So we sort of have that head start. What becomes challenging is to get them through the course of the process to continue trusting us, because there's a tendency for them to say, well, can we squeeze this in? Can we shove this in? Can we say the phone number multiple times?
Right. The VIN number thing. Yeah.
I used to say, right. And we fight the good fight. We try and, you know, just offer our opinions and remind them that why they sort of hired us. But at the end of the day, you sort of end up with a bit of a hybrid, you know, where we got a lot of what we wanted, but sometimes not all of it. Right. And and that's just sort of where it all shakes out.
Yeah, Jim, on the brand side of it, from your experiences over time, when have brands gotten the most out of audio and radio in your mind, in your experience?
Like specific, you know,
it could be. I mean, it could be a specific campaign, but it could be working with a particular marketer.
Well, I mean, I guess more as a generality, I just like when, you know, and this is something we all just kind of talked about, was, you know, when folks are using it as brand building and awareness and things like that, and it's not about, you know, 6 packs of 7-Up are $3. Do they still make 7-Up? I keep showing my age. You know, I don't think folks really appreciate you know, the value and impact that it can have when it's done right. And so much of that is because what I said before, that, you know, everything that's airing before and after you, there's a 95% chance it stinks. Right. And I mean, it just will, you know, go listen to the radio. I mean, it's gonna stink. So anything above average, that's all your bar has to be. You know, I like to keep it a little higher, but
I think we all do. Yeah, those of us who've been in it. Yeah,
you know, mediocrity will take you a long way in radio. So imagine what good radio will do.
Yeah.
You know, I just think, and that's sad to say, really, that so many brands have just kind of waved the white flag and say, "Oh, this is what we used to do." Well, we have a say. You know, this buy has to pay for itself. I don't know why. You know, the billboard that just says, you know, 2 words or whatever didn't have to pay for itself. It wasn't tasked with you know, selling this or that, and so it sounds like a broken record because we've been saying the same thing for 30 years. But a
smart marketer or CMO is just going to listen and realize, like I said earlier, there is some untapped potential and territory in there. Oh, brief aside, I saw a billboard that had a QR code on it. I was like, what the fuck?
God. Yeah, nice and safe.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, it was the weirdest thing.
It's like you know, there are occasions when we'll work into conversations like name your, you know, when we're being briefed and we want to get a sense for what they'll gravitate toward. We'll say, tell us the best radio work you've ever heard.
Oh, right.
Ever. And it's never been a direct response commercial with like, you know, call now, blah, 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 you know, that it's always the Molson couple, you know, Real Men of Genius, the Charlton Heston Bud Light stuff, you know, whatever.
Oh God,
It's that stuff, obviously, because it's stuff you would talk about at the dinner table. And that's our goal every time. When me and Jim go back over scripts, we'll say, would you talk about this at the dinner table kind of thing? That's the bar that's set. And not one of them said, did you hear that great commercial that said their phone number 4 times? It's never been uttered.
Well, what is it? Cars for Kids? Me, I guess. I don't even know that jingle. Those of us on the West Coast, we're familiar with it, but we don't know. Do you consider yourselves weirdos, misfits, or underdogs?
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely underdogs.
Yeah. Why is that?
Well, I would say that by hands down. You know, when we started, as I mentioned, there was a lot of this work, but we were competing against Dick Orkin, Burt Burtis, Jim Kirby, Joy Golden, you know, and after time, the industry sort of changed and less projects were going outside. And so while at one time we may have had 12 or 15 competitors, for the past 10 years, we've had very few, and most every one of them is, you know, closed up. And so our current fight is against, I guess, as we've sort of outlined here, complacency. You know, when many brands just don't care enough to go to the same lengths as they used to, or they often relying on, you know, streaming services or radio networks that say, hey, we'll do your commercial for little or nothing. If you commit to some level of media buy,
you get what you pay for.
And so, you know, we continue fighting to this day, but for a different cause. So I would say we've always felt like underdogs, and we're in a niche, you know, radio that is that is like the redheaded stepchild.
But I'm telling you, brands, this is the space. You will get efficiency when you do really creative work. Think about audio. When you said, Dan, you said it earlier, talking around the dinner table. Audio is the most portable and shareable thing out there. I mean, go for it and trust these guys. Seriously, trust your creatives. And seriously, have a conversation about it, because it might be 30s, it might be 15s, but I guarantee you, Dan and Jim will give you a bunch of other options and opportunities to mine the space in a way where you can really stand out. I've known these clowns for a long time. And I say that with love. I say it with love, and they would call me a clown to my face. But seriously, no, I know. Thanks, Jim. But in all honesty, I will say to marketers and to brands, it is a vastly underutilized space. Use it. Call Dan, call Jim. Gentlemen, thank you for supporting this mission, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having us.